Keep your calls coming in on whether you want to see Sergio Aguero remain in the Premier League and go to a different team. We were talking about it earlier on. I can't see it happening. Ali, I don't think you could either. But we have seen in the past 08717 223344, and whether or not that Aguero moment against QPR is the most iconic moment in Premier League history. There's only one man to discuss this with, a man who has scored over 100 Premier League goals himself. Still 75 less than Aguero, though. It's a very good morning once again to Mr. Darren Bent. So, Darren, you came bursting in here a second ago, full of the kind of, right, who's better than him, who's worse than him, is he in the top five, what where does he, what does Aguero mean to you in terms of that kind of striker and that man in Premier League history?
Oh, listen, he's up there as one of the very best. You'd have to say that. I mean, his goals to minutes ratio is incredible. Iconic moments. I mean, I still remember, I think it was Swansea's debut, the two. I mean, the second one, I remember thinking, oh, okay. But yeah, listen, he's been incredible. I mean, you'd have to say in terms of Manchester City's kind of transition into what they are now, he was a big part of that. Vincent Kompany also, David Silva. So listen, he's outstanding. As I said, he's up there, one of the very, very best. And as I said, the Manchester City fans will miss him.
Yeah. Do you know what I could put it in a nutshell for you, would you? Which is unbelievable. We're talking about fellow 100 Club member Darren Bent. We're sitting here discussing, right, Aguero's next move, Independiente. Is it back to Spain? You know what I mean? Is he going to go to Chelsea? Whereas we know that his fellow 100 Club member Darren Bent's going to play with Georgie. Do you know what I mean? That's that in a nutshell, mate. That's that in a nutshell.
Oh, I can feel that one hurt him.
How the mighty have fallen, Benty.
I'm looking forward to playing with Georgie up front.
Yeah. He said he's going to be really vocal with you.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Do you know what? Just to go back on what you mentioned before we came on air about strikers you put ahead of him, and you said Thierry Henry would be up there. Who else did you say you'd put ahead of him in terms of what they've done in the Premier League?
So in terms of, listen, I'm putting Thierry above. For me, Thierry's the best. I don't think, personally, Aguero's in that same bracket in terms of all-round play. I think there's a lot that I think Thierry could do that Aguero can't. But it's very limited to what Aguero could do that Thierry couldn't. You'd have to say Shearer. I mean, 260, that is incredible.
Yeah.
I think Rooney is up there. So listen, I mean, for being the actual best, there's so many different arguments. I mean, if you're asking who my personal favourite five are, mine would be Thierry, Drogba, Ian Wright, Rooney and Shearer. That would be my five.
Doesn't make your top five.
He wouldn't make my personal favourite top five, no. But listen, as I said, he's absolutely outstanding. But there's been so many greats, and someone who doesn't even get a mention, Andy Cole, for instance, he scored one penalty.
Yep.
He's got 81 Premier League goals and scored one penalty. I mean, that is frightening in itself.
Yep.
It's funny with Andy Cole, actually, because I remember doing a show with him, and he said that he only scored. He missed a penalty, didn't he? And said, right, since then he would never take another penalty
he
again.
took one and he scored it.
Yeah,
but he said
then after that, didn't he miss one and was like, I'll never do that again?
He never wants to take one again. And even the one that he scored, they had to force him to take it, he said.
He just hated it.
Like, force him to score goals. Like, what? I've never heard anything like it.
But you're right, it goes to show the number of goals that he scored without having
That's
penalties
amazing.
in his locker.
Yeah, that is some stat. I wasn't aware of that, Benty, I'll tell you. I mean, I love Andy Cole. Absolutely love him as a finisher. Great, but I wasn't aware that he only scored one penalty.
And he didn't want to take him. He said he didn't like taking penalties.
Wow.
What is it about strikers? Because the ones that you have named there and the ones that mean more to you, it is a very personal thing, isn't it? Actually, it's not always just how many goals they scored. Or we read a stat earlier on about goals per minute, because Aguero tops the lot. The amount of goals that he scored and the time that taken, he's ahead of all those great players. But it's the way that they. What is it for you? Is it the way that those players played and their style? What was it about it?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at someone like a Thierry, I mean, it was like effortless, wasn't it? Everything that he did in terms of his finishing, his assists, the pace. I mean, he was unstoppable. You'd have to say at one period, he was unstoppable. You look at people like, I mean, Shearer's just a goal machine, isn't he? Every season, 20 plus. And he's had two, I think he had two, Ali, did he? Big injuries as well.
That's right.
Where he pretty much missed two seasons. So there's that. But then you look at someone like a Drogba, and out of everyone I've named on my list, if I've got a cup final, I'm picking Drogba out of all of them. Any player, striker that's played in Premier League history, if I've got to a Champions League final, FA Cup final, I'm putting Drogba up front.
Which is kind of big coming from an Arsenal fan who he notoriously terrorised.
He's I seen it first hand.
But do you know who you mentioned? You know who you mentioned, Benty, and I would have him in mine as well for a number of reasons. But righty for me.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons I would have him in, mate, and I'll tell you why, is he was a scorer of great goals, scorer of all sorts of goals, because he scored great goals. But also, I just loved his face lit up the stadium after he scored.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's important. To somebody like me, I like seeing somebody enjoy their goals. Kenny Dalglish was another one. Kenny's face lit up the stadium after he scored. And Righty was the same. That just big smile, you know. I loved it. Righty for me was magic.
Do you know what's nice? And you're right, Ali. I mean, I love seeing strikers celebrate and really score. I mean, a lot of nowadays you see some people scoring goals, they're not smiling, they're quite angry, and I think scoring goals is the best feeling in the world, bar none. So you got to enjoy it, because listen, there will be lean times where you go long periods without scoring, so you need to enjoy them times when the ball's flying in the back of the net.
If Aguero comes back to the Premier League, could you see him, well, I suppose first, could you see him coming back to the Premier League? Could you see him to go someone like Chelsea, because they were linked with him last week?
Well, listen, he's still here right now, so I'm guessing that. I mean, that would be big. I mean, it's difficult because I'm thinking, nah, he wouldn't do that because he's been at Manchester City for so long. But then we've seen others do it. I know Lampard went away and came back and went to City. But, I mean, listen, why not? I mean, how old is Aguero? 30?
32.
Maybe, but I don't think maybe Chelsea would be the right place for him, because they've still got Tammy there. Giroud's still there. He's not playing many minutes. Timo Werner's there. Then you've got Aguero, do you know what I mean, who's had his injuries. But listen, he'll make any team better. But will he go to Chelsea now? I can only see him going back to Argentina.
Do you think, to Independiente?
Yeah.
Do you think that is what he's done in his career? The Champions League is the one that would probably top up that City career more than anything. It's the one that they won, isn't it? Do you think that if he didn't win the Champions League with City, he would want to have another crack at it?
Potentially. I mean, you're right. That's probably the only one trophy since he's been at City that's eluded him. So I'm sure he'd be massively disappointed if they didn't win it this year, or he was to leave. Do I think that would kind of play into his thinking in terms of where he went next? I really don't think it does, because I think his legacy's already there at Manchester City. He's still one of their all-time greats. So I don't think he'd not tarnish his kind of reputation by going to another Premier League team, but I just don't think that's in his makeup.